Simpler. You're not broke because you're not smart enough. You're broke because somewhere along the way, your intelligence started working against you instead of for you. The real question is, what if the very thing you're proud of is the exact thing holding you back? Overthinking is one of the most silent destroyers of opportunity. It doesn't shout, it doesn't warn, it simply delays. And delay over time becomes loss. You tell yourself you're being careful. You say you're just thinking things through. You convince yourself that one more day, one more plan, one more adjustment will make everything perfect. But what you don't realize is that while you're thinking, life is moving. Opportunities don't wait for clarity, they respond to courage. The tragedy is not that you don't have ideas. The tragedy is that your ideas never leave your mind. They sit there, perfectly designed, perfectly analyzed, and completely unused. And every day they stay there, they lose value. Because timing matters. Windows close, chances pass. And someone else, less prepared but more decisive, steps into the life you were supposed to live. There's something deeply emotional about this, because overthinking is often rooted in fear. Fear of failure, fear of judgment, fear of making the wrong move. And instead of confronting that fear, you dress it up as intelligence. You call it logic. You call it strategy. But deep down, it's hesitation. And hesitation has a cost. Think about how many times you felt ready, almost ready, but you paused. How many doors were in front of you, and instead of walking through them, you stood there analyzing the hinges. How many moments were meant to change your life, but you delayed just long enough for them to disappear? There's a spiritual weight to this as well. You were given abilities, ideas, and dreams for a reason. These are not accidents. They are a trust placed in your hands. And when you constantly overthink instead of act, it's like holding on to a gift but refusing to open it. It's like being shown a path but choosing to stand still. Faith was never meant to be passive. It was meant to be lived through action. You pray for opportunities, for growth, for provision. But when those opportunities arrive, they rarely come labeled as safe or certain. They come as risks. They come as uncomfortable decisions. They come as moments that require you to step forward without having every answer. And in those moments, overthinking becomes more than just a habit. It becomes resistance. Because sometimes the blessing you're waiting for is hidden inside the step you're avoiding. There's also a pain that comes later, a quiet regret that builds over time. Not because you failed, but because you never tried. Because you let your thoughts become a cage instead of a tool. Because you allowed doubt to speak louder than possibility. And that regret is heavy. It shows up in the what ifs. What if you had started earlier? What if you had taken that risk? What if you had trusted yourself just a little more? Overthinking steals not just opportunities, but confidence. The longer you stay stuck in your head, the harder it becomes to move. The mind creates more scenarios, more fears, more reasons to wait, and slowly you begin to believe that action is dangerous, when in reality, inaction is what's costing you everything. Because success doesn't come from having the perfect plan. It comes from moving, adjusting, learning, and growing. It comes from stepping forward, even when your mind is full of questions. It comes from trusting that clarity often follows action, not the other way around. And the longer you wait for perfect certainty, the further you drift from the life you were meant to build. Action is the point where everything real begins. Intelligence, no matter how sharp, remains powerless if it never leaves the mind and enters the world of execution. You can have the most detailed plan, the most brilliant strategy, and the clearest understanding of how things should work, but until you move, until you act, it remains nothing more than potential. There is a common illusion that thinking more will eventually lead to perfect results. But life doesn't reward perfect thinking, it rewards movement. Intelligence without action is like having a map but refusing to start the journey. You can study every route, every shortcut, every possible obstacle, but you will never reach the destination unless you take the first step. And here is where most people silently lose their opportunity. They confuse preparation with progress. They feel productive while planning, analyzing, and imagining outcomes. But deep down, nothing is changing. Days turn into weeks, weeks into months, and the mind becomes a place full of unfinished ideas that were never tested in reality. Execution is what separates dreamers from achievers. Not because dreamers lack intelligence, but because achievers refuse to stay in the comfort of thinking. They understand something simple yet powerful. Clarity comes after movement, not before it. When you act, you learn. When you learn, you adjust. And when you adjust, you grow. But none of this begins until action happens. There is also a deeper emotional truth here. Many intelligent people hesitate because they fear imperfection. They want their first step to be flawless, their first attempt to succeed without error. But perfection is not the entry point of success, it is the result of repeated effort. Every successful person you admire once started with uncertainty, mistakes, and incomplete knowledge. What made them different was not what they knew, but what they did with what they knew. Simpler. And on a spiritual level, action carries responsibility. Life does not respond to intention alone. You can intend to change your life for years, but intention without effort has no weight. You are given thoughts, ideas, and inspiration not just to admire them internally, but to bring them into reality through effort and discipline. There is a reason movement is repeatedly emphasized in Life It is the bridge between potential and provision. The painful part is that intelligence often becomes an excuse for delay. You start believing you need more information, more time, more certainty, but in reality, you already have enough to begin. And every moment you delay execution, you are not preparing, you are simply postponing. Simpler. Because ideas that stay in the mind do not grow. They do not evolve. They do not create results. They only exist as thoughts. But the moment you act on them, even imperfectly, they become something alive, something real, something that can fail, succeed, or transform, but at least it is no longer stagnant. And that is where real difference is created, not in how much you know, but in how much you are willing to do with what you already know. Perfection often looks like discipline, but in reality, it can quietly become delay wearing a respectable face. It convinces you that you are being careful, responsible, and strategic. It tells you to wait until everything aligns, until the timing feels right, until you feel completely ready. But the truth is that perfect moment rarely arrives the way you imagine it. Simpler. What people call perfection is often just fear that has learned to speak softly. Fear of failure, fear of embarrassment, fear of starting something that might not go well at the first attempt. So instead of admitting that fear, the mind creates a safer story. I'll start when it's perfect, but perfection is not a starting point. It is a moving target that keeps shifting the closer you get to it. You keep adjusting, refining, and delaying, believing each small improvement is progress. But deep down, nothing is being tested in reality. Everything remains in your control and your imagination, where nothing can go wrong and nothing can grow either. And because nothing is at risk, nothing is truly being built. Simpler. There is an emotional weight to this pattern. Years can pass while you are still preparing. Opportunities that once felt alive slowly lose their urgency. The energy you once had begins to fade, replaced by hesitation and doubt. And one day, you look back and realize you were not stuck because you lacked ability. You were stuck because you kept waiting for conditions that were never meant to exist. From a deeper perspective, life does not work on perfection. Growth has always been connected to imperfection, trial, and adjustment. Every meaningful achievement begins with something unfinished. Every strong foundation starts as something uncertain. If everything had to be perfect before starting, nothing significant would ever begin. Simpler. There is also a spiritual truth hidden here. You are not required to wait for ideal conditions to act on what you believe is right. Often guidance becomes clearer after movement, not before it. When you take a step with sincerity, even if it is incomplete, you open doors that hesitation keeps closed. Waiting for perfection can become a form of disconnect from that flow because it replaces trust with control. And control feels safe, but it quietly keeps you stuck. The deeper issue is not that you want things to be perfect, it is that perfection gives you a reason to delay facing uncertainty. Because once you begin, you are exposed, you are visible, you are accountable, and that is uncomfortable. So the mind protects you by suggesting more preparation, more planning, more time, but time does not stay still for preparation. It moves forward regardless. And while you are refining your start, life is already moving past the moment you were meant to enter. Simpler. The reality is, imperfect action has always created more change than perfect planning. The first step rarely looks impressive. It often feels uncertain, unpolished, and incomplete. But it is real, and real things can grow, adapt, and improve. Imagine perfection cannot. And slowly, you begin to realize that perfection was never the goal. It was the delay that disguised itself as responsibility. Small steps are often underestimated because they do not feel powerful in the moment. They do not bring instant recognition, they do not create sudden change, and they rarely look impressive from the outside. But in reality, they are the foundation of everything that becomes strong, stable, and lasting. Simpler. Wealth is rarely created in one big moment. It is built in silence, through repeated decisions that seem small on their own but become significant over time. A small amount saved consistently, a small skill improved daily, a small effort repeated when motivation is low. None of these actions feel like they are changing your life in a single day, but they are quietly shaping your future. The human mind often ignores small actions because it seeks immediate results. It wants visible progress, fast outcomes, and clear rewards. But financial growth does not follow emotional impatience. It follows discipline. And discipline is built through repetition, not intensity. There is something deeply powerful about consistency. When you repeat a small action every day, it starts to accumulate in ways you cannot immediately see. Like drops of water forming a river, each effort may feel insignificant alone, but together they create unstoppable momentum. And momentum is what eventually separates stability from struggle. Most people fail not because they never start, but because they underestimate the power of staying consistent after starting. They begin with energy, then stop when results are not immediate. But wealth responds differently. It rewards those who continue even when nothing visible is happening yet. There is also an emotional challenge behind small steps. They test patience. They require belief in something you cannot yet see. It is easy to stay committed when results are obvious, but much harder when progress feels invisible. This is where most people give up, not because the system failed, but because their patience ran out before the growth became visible. And yet, this invisible phase is where real transformation is happening. Behind the scenes, habits are forming. Discipline is strengthening. Financial behavior is shifting. What seems like no progress is actually the foundation being laid for future stability. From a deeper perspective, consistency is a form of trust. Trust in the process, trust in effort, trust that what you are doing today will matter tomorrow, even if today feels ordinary. And that trust is often tested in the smallest actions, choosing to save instead of spend, choosing to learn instead of delay, choosing to show up when it feels unnecessary. There is also a quiet emotional truth here. Many people want wealth, but few are willing to respect the small steps that lead to it. They admire results but ignore the process. Yet every financial success story is built on years of unnoticed repetition, not sudden luck. And over time, those small, consistent actions begin to compound. What once felt slow starts to accelerate. What once felt invisible starts to become undeniable. And the very habits that seemed insignificant at the beginning become the reason for long-term financial stability. Ego is one of the quietest barriers to growth because it does not feel like a limitation. It feels like confidence. It tells you that you already understand enough, that you have seen enough, that you do not need to look further. And slowly, without you realizing it, that belief begins to close the doors that learning requires. Real learning always begins with humility, the willingness to admit that what you know is still incomplete. But ego resists that admission. It creates an internal illusion of certainty, where questions feel unnecessary and curiosity starts to fade. And the moment curiosity disappears, growth begins to slow down. There is a subtle emotional trap here. The mind enjoys the comfort of familiarity. It prefers being right over being open. So instead of seeking new understanding, it starts defending existing beliefs. It filters out new ideas that challenge its position. And over time, the person stops learning not because knowledge is unavailable, but because openness has been replaced by self-assurance. This is how growth silently stops, not through ignorance, but through the belief that I already know. And that belief is dangerous because it feels like strength. It gives a sense of control and superiority. But in reality, it becomes a ceiling, a limit placed on potential without realizing it. Because no matter how much someone knows, life always has more to teach. And the moment you believe you are done learning, you begin to fall behind without noticing. There is also a deeper emotional cost. Ego blocks feedback. It makes correction feel like criticism instead of guidance. It turns learning opportunities into personal challenges. And instead of absorbing wisdom, the mind starts protecting identity. But growth requires the ability to separate what you are from what you are becoming. From a broader perspective, every stage of progress demands a beginner's mindset again and again. Even successful people remain students of life in different areas. The moment someone refuses to learn, they stop evolving. Because knowledge is not a destination, it is a continuous process of refinement. There is also a spiritual dimension to this. True wisdom often begins with acknowledgement of limitation, the awareness that no matter how much you understand, there is still more beyond you. That awareness keeps a person open, receptive, and grounded. But ego replaces that openness with finality, as if learning has reached its end. And when learning stops, stagnation begins. The most painful part is that ego does not announce itself as ego. It hides behind phrases like, I already know this, or I've done this before, or this is nothing new. But every time those thoughts take control, an opportunity to grow is quietly missed. Because life does not stop teaching. It keeps presenting lessons in different forms, different situations, different people, but only those who remain open are able to receive them. And the ones who believe they already know enough slowly stop recognizing the lessons when they appear. Fear is rarely loud or obvious. It does not announce itself as fear. Instead, it disguises itself as logic, reasoning, and careful thinking. It sounds convincing. It feels responsible. And that is exactly why it becomes so dangerous for intelligent people. Smart minds are especially vulnerable to this illusion because they are skilled at building explanations. They can take hesitation and turn it into structured thinking. They can take uncertainty and turn it into analysis. And before they realize it, they are no longer avoiding action because of fear. They believe they are avoiding it because it is the smart thing to do. This is how inaction becomes justified. You start saying things like, the timing isn't right. I need more information. I should wait until conditions improve, or let me observe a little longer. On the surface, these statements appear reasonable. They sound mature. They sound strategic. But beneath them, there is often something unspoken discomfort with uncertainty and fear of failure. Fear becomes intelligent when it learns to speak in a calm voice. And because it sounds logical, it is rarely questioned. In fact, it is often praised. People admire caution. They respect careful decision-making. But not every form of caution is wisdom. Sometimes it is hesitation wearing the mask of intelligence. The emotional truth is this. Action always involves risk, and fear does not want risk. So instead of admitting resistance, it builds arguments. It collects reasons. It creates scenarios where delay feels safer than movement. And the more intelligent a person is, the more sophisticated those reasons become. Simpler. But no matter how refined the reasoning is, the result remains the same: no progress. There is also a quiet internal conflict that happens here. Part of you knows what needs to be done. You can feel it. You can see it clearly in moments of honesty. But another part keeps producing explanations for why it should wait. And over time, the second voice becomes louder because it is more comfortable to listen to. This is how opportunities slowly slip away without dramatic failure. Not because you made a wrong decision, but because you kept postponing the right one. From a deeper perspective, growth requires moving beyond purely logical comfort. Life does not always present safe conditions before rewarding action. Many meaningful steps begin in uncertainty. Many successful outcomes start without guarantees. And those who wait for complete safety often find themselves permanently waiting. There is also a spiritual dimension to this pattern. Intention alone is not enough when it never becomes movement. Life responds to effort, not just reasoning. And sometimes the push you are waiting for will never feel perfectly logical. In the moment, it will simply require trust and action. Fear, when disguised as logic, is difficult to detect because it respects your intelligence. It does not say, don't do it. It says, not yet. It does not stop you completely. It delays you just enough to keep you comfortable while progress moves elsewhere. And the longer that delay continues, the more natural it starts to feel, until hesitation becomes habit and excuses begin to sound like truth. Purpose is not something that reveals itself to passive observers. It responds to movement, to effort, to the willingness to step forward even when clarity is incomplete. Standing still may feel safe, but it slowly disconnects you from the very direction you are trying to find. Simpler. Many people wait for purpose to feel fully clear before they act. They believe understanding must come first and action will follow later. But in reality, purpose is often uncovered through movement, not before it. Clarity is not the starting point, it is the result of engagement with life. When you stand still, your potential remains theoretical. You can think about who you might become, imagine the impact you could create, and visualize the life you want. But imagination alone does not test your abilities, refine your character, or reveal your strengths and weaknesses. Only action does that. There is a deep emotional struggle in this stillness. A person can feel restless inside while appearing inactive outside. The mind begins to create tension because it knows there is more to be done, but the body remains unchanged. That gap between awareness and action becomes a silent source of frustration. And slowly that frustration turns into doubt, not about your purpose, but about yourself. But purpose was never meant to be discovered in comfort. It is shaped in motion. Every step forward, even uncertain ones, begins to reveal direction. You learn what fits, what doesn't, where your energy grows and where it fades. And through that process, what once felt unclear begins to take shape. There is also a truth many people overlook. Movement itself creates opportunities. You do not always find purpose by waiting for Sinzu, often find it by engaging with life long enough for signs to appear. Doors do not open for those who only think about them, they open for those who approach them. From a deeper perspective, stillness without purpose can become stagnation. Reflection is important, but when reflection replaces action completely, it becomes a loop with no output. Growth requires balance, but it leans heavily on doing, not just thinking. Simpler. There is also a spiritual dimension to this idea. Intention is powerful, but it is not complete until it is expressed through effort. Many teachings emphasize that intention must be paired with action for transformation to occur. Purpose is not only something you understand internally, it is something you participate in externally. And often the path does not become visible all at once. It unfolds step by step as you move into it. Each action reveals a small part of the larger direction. Each attempt refines your understanding. Each effort removes confusion and replaces it with experience. Standing still may feel like waiting for certainty, but life rarely offers certainty before commitment. It responds to those who are willing to move despite uncertainty, trusting that clarity will develop along the way. Simpler. And in that movement, purpose begins to shift from something you are searching for into something you are actively building. Hook, intro separate, asterisk, 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 you're not broke because you're not smart enough. You're broke because somewhere along the way, your intelligence started working against you instead of for you. The real question is what if the very thing you're proud of is the exact thing holding you back? Hash Hash Studio motivational script. Asterisk the mistake that keeps smart people broke. Asterisk there's a quiet trap that catches intelligent people. And it's dangerous because it doesn't look like a problem at first. Smart people tend to analyze everything. They calculate risks, study outcomes, and wait for the perfect moment. But here's the truth while they're busy thinking. Someone less intelligent is busy acting. And action, not intelligence, is what changes your financial life. The mistake is simple, but costly. Overthinking instead of executing. Asterisk, asterisk, simpler. You see, intelligence can become a disguise for fear. It sounds like logic. It feels like preparation. But deep down, it's hesitation wearing a suit. Smart people often want certainty before they move. But success has never required certainty, only courage and consistency. While you're perfecting your plan, opportunities are passing you by. While you're waiting for clarity, someone else is learning through mistakes and getting ahead. Life doesn't reward the smartest thinker. It rewards the one who takes responsibility for action. Asterisk, there's another layer to this mistake. Smart people often believe they are above small beginnings. They want big results, but they underestimate the power of small, consistent steps. But the truth is, wealth is built quietly, in discipline, in patience, in daily decisions no one applauds. And there's something even deeper, something spiritual. You were not created to just think about your potential. You were created to use it. Simpler. Every delay, every excuse, every moment of hesitation, it's not just costing you money. It's delaying the purpose placed inside you. Because provision follows action. Doors open when you move. Blessings meet you on the path, not in the planning stage. So the real shift is this. Stop asking, what if I fail? Start asking, what happens if I never try? Because the greatest loss is not failure, it's unused potential. Hash hash key 7 keynotes of this title. Simpler. 1. Asterisk asterisk overthinking kills opportunity. Asterisk asterisk thinking too much delays the very success you're capable of achieving. 2. Asterisk asterisk action beats intelligence. Asterisk asterisk execution will always outperform ideas that never leave your mind. 3. Asterisk asterisk perfection is a hidden excuse. Asterisk asterisk waiting for the perfect moment is often fear in disguise. 4. Asterisk asterisk small steps build wealth. Asterisk asterisk consistency in small actions creates long-term financial growth. 5. Asterisk asterisk ego blocks learning. Asterisk asterisk believing you already know enough prevents you from growing. 6. Asterisk 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 fear sounds like logic. Asterisk asterisk smart people justify an action with reasonable excuses. 7. Asterisk asterisk purpose requires movement. Asterisk asterisk you can't fulfill your purpose standing still. Hash hash end arrow closing message. You don't need another idea. You don't need more information. What you need is movement, because your future is not waiting on your intelligence, it's waiting on your decision to act. Simpler. Start where you are. Move with what you have. And trust this, when you take one step forward, life has a way of meeting you halfway.